All right, welcome back, guys. We got a fun episode today for a number of reasons. All right, reason one, we completely changed our setup here. Okay, I was getting sick of the whiteboard. All right, and I always had all these ideas for like the visuals that we do, and I can't draw for shit. So now, thanks to Chat GPT, okay, we have really cool visuals now. So I'm not a graphic designer, I just have ideas. And it's also gonna be fun because we are going to dive into some like real psychology today. Okay, I was thinking a lot about, right. I'm very much always, weak men do this, weak men do that, and it's very easy to say that weak men quit, right? And it's true. All right, if you quit, you're fucking weak. All right, that's the truth. But I think there's a lot more psychology that goes into it. So we spent some time doing some research, all right, and I have a fun little presentation for you guys today, all right? So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, guys, let's get into it. We're gonna try and do this in one go. I want to be like more conversational, right? Because normally when I do it off the whiteboard, I like will write out a script for each like little 30-second to a minute section. And I don't know. I feel like it was a little robotic. And one of the reasons I listen to them back sometimes. I'm like, yeah, it's not super engaging. So we're gonna be a little more conversational here. We're gonna try and get through it in one go. I'm probably gonna mix up my words a lot, but we're gonna give it our best shot here. All right. I have like good ideas. I'm not a professional fucking speaker yet. So let's get into it. So, so the real purpose of quitting. So why we're doing this episode, I feel like most people assume that quitting is failure of effort. And I think it's deeper than that. I think there's a more psychological reason that men quit. And I think for men, quitting is often a protection mechanism, right? The brain is trying to protect their self-image, certainty, social belonging, emotional comfort, and identity, right? And I think that changes the entire conversation where instead of, right, when we see people quit, instead of thinking, okay, why are they weak? Right? Instead, we should be asking, like, what are they trying to protect when they quit? All right. So, what are they trying to protect? All right. First thing here, their ego, right? Quitting protects a man's ego. Um, right? A man can always tell himself, I could have succeeded if I tried, right? But the moment that he gives full effort and fails, now he has to confront like the terrifying reality of what if I'm not as capable as I thought, right? And men never pursue their dreams seriously because the fantasy is safer than the reality, right? Think about it. The guy who never starts the business can always imagine he would have been successful. The guy who never approaches the girl, he can always imagine that she would have liked him, right? The guy who never commits can always imagine he had potential, right? And potential becomes a hiding place, right? Men don't fear failure. They fear the death of the fantasy version of themselves, okay? So let's talk about these images here. So the first one is the ego shield, right? Quitting protects your ego. So I talked about how potential becomes a hiding place, right? Potential is the shield from failure, rejection, embarrassment, and judgment, right? Reality is scary. And potential feels safe because it has never been challenged, right? And like I said, men would rather protect their potential than to test it, okay? The second image here, right? The fantasy version versus the reality version, right? And we've had similar images before, but right, your fantasy self, right? You're a millionaire, you're confident, maybe you're a little famous, right? You're respected, right? You're in good shape, all that stuff, right? And let's be real, your current self, you're probably a little bit distracted, you're probably inconsistent, right? You're probably undisciplined, right? And you're probably fearful of what's going to happen if you actually try and achieve your goals, right? And the bridge to get from your current self to your fantasy self is a shit ton of work, and it's the ability to not fucking quit, right? Quitting protects the fantasy version from being tested, okay? Moving on. Next one here. Quitting, a lot of men quit because their identity is threatened, right? We all have like an identity and an image that we like to portray to other people, right? No matter how successful or not successful you are, we all have an image, right? And I don't think people always quit when things get hard. People quit when reality contradicts their self-image. For example, right? Say someone thinks they're smart, right? Then he starts to try and do something difficult, right? He struggles. Now he experiences psychological tension because reality is saying maybe you're not naturally gifted, right? Maybe you're not as smart as you thought. And what's the easiest solution? To fucking quit, right? Now he never has to update his identity, right? So the lesson becomes growth requires the destruction of old identities. Therefore, the image that we got here, the identity wall, all right? The wall here represents your portrayed identity, right? Where you're smart, talented, special, gifted. And on the other side of that wall is all the failure, the rejection, the losing, right? That's all like all the shit you have to go through in order to be successful, right? The wall, it's not protecting the success, it's protecting your identity, right? And growth begins where old identities break, right? So you got to break down your old identity so that you can grow a new one, okay? Moving on here. The brain hates uncertainty more than failure. All right. This is a really big one, right? Humans are surprisingly good at handling pain, right? What destroys them is the uncertainty, right? Think about the hardest phases of building a business, right? Getting in shape, content creation, right? Learning high income skills, right? All of this stuff. It's not necessarily the effort. It's not knowing if effort will work, right? You can work hard for 3 months, 6 months, 2 years with no guarantee anything is going to work, right? The uncertainty creates enormous psychological stress. And men quit not because they're tired, they quit because they want certainty, right? Even the certainty of failure, because certainty feels safer than ambiguity, right? The average man would rather know he's losing than wonder if he's going to win, all right? And it sounds crazy, but it's true. Like, fucking think about it, all right? Anyways, the image here. This is one of my favorite images here. So the uncertainty desert, okay? Here's you at the start, okay? Right down here. And success, it's somewhere in the desert, right? But it's a desert, right? It all looks the fucking same, right? You don't know where you're going. You don't know which way is north. You don't know what way is south. All you know is success is out there somewhere, right? So most people don't quit because they're tired. They quit because they can't see how far away the success is, all right? But you got to know it's out there somewhere, and you just got to keep walking through the desert, all right? And you're going to find it, all right? Moving on. Men quit to rejoin the tribe, okay? This might have been a little bit of a stretch, but I kind of like the idea here. So let's talk about it, okay? Right? Humans evolved in tribes, right? Being excluded historically meant death. So because of this, our brains are highly sensitive to social rejection, right? Now, imagine a young man who starts to become serious about their goals, right? He trains harder, he stops partying, and he studies more, right? What happens? People start noticing. Sometimes they mock him, sometimes they pull away, sometimes they make him feel weird, right? Psychologically, he's experienced a threat, not physical, but socially, right? His brain interprets it as you're leaving the tribe, right? Many men unconsciously sabotage themselves to regain acceptance, right? This is why ambitious periods often feel lonely. The deeper truth here, some men don't quit because the goal is difficult. They quit because success is separating them from the crowd, right? So the image here, pretty straightforward, right? The flag at the top, right? That's his goals, right? But pulling him from climbing the mountain is the partying, the comfort, the approval, and trying to fit in, right? So are you climbing the mountain or are you protecting your membership to the crowd, right? That's what you got to start thinking about, okay? Moving on here. So the pain of becoming a beginner again. This is a really big one, right? Because most men build confidence around competence, right? They like feeling knowledgeable, capable, and respected, right? Every major growth phase requires becoming a beginner at something, right? And beginners feel stupid, right? You suck at it, right? Starting a business, sales, being a leader, right? Training, public speak. Me right now trying to speak, right? When you first start, you are going to suck at it, right? I'm literally going through that right now, right? I just started a sales job and I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad I'm 1099 and I'm already feeling like the financial benefits of being in a high income skill. But the fact is, I'm not that old. I'm 22, but there are people on my team that are so much better at sales than me, right? And it sucks, but like that's where you just got to put your ego aside, accept you're a beginner. And I can sit here and have an ego about and say I can't learn from that guy. He's younger than me, or sit there and be like, no, that guy, he might be younger than me, but he knows more than me. So I'm going to sit there and learn from that guy. I'm going to accept I'm a beginner at something. I'm going to stick with it because I know where it's going to lead me in life. So anyways, like I said, right? The ego hates this, right? So many men retreat back to activities where they already feel competent, not because they lack the ability, but because they can't tolerate incompetence, okay? Most men would rather stay good at something small than become bad at something important, okay? the image here, okay? I don't, this is not my favorite image, but it's the image that chat gave me off of my explanation here. All right. So you've got the beginner's graveyard, right? Quitting during the beginner phase, right? All the graveyards here, right? You got your business dream, you got your fitness goals, you got your YouTube channel, skill development, book, whatever it might be, right? Most dreams die because grown men are embarrassed to look like beginners, okay? That's just a fact, right? You got to fall, get up, repeat, okay? All that motivational BS, okay? Moving on here. Quitting is often an escape from self-awareness, right? We talk about self-awareness a lot. And in order to achieve a goals, like all your goals, self-awareness is where you got to start. You got to have the ability to look yourself in the mirror and accept who you really are right now so that you can grow, right? So when you're pursuing a meaningful goal, right, you start discovering yourself. Your weaknesses become visible, your fears, your excuses, your lack of discipline, right? And your goal, it starts to act like a mirror. And many men don't like what they see. Sometimes quitting isn't escaping the challenge, it's escaping the truth the challenge revealed, right? So the image here, pretty straightforward, the mirror of weakness, right? You're looking at yourself in the mirror, right? And looking back at you is the excuses, your procrastination, your fear, your inconsistency, and your laziness. And a lot of men run when they see that, right? You can't, all right? You cannot, all right? Next image here, I don't know, this probably might go a little bit better with our next section, but I put it on this slide. So the comfort cave, right? I wanted this to be a cage. But anyways, outside of the comfort cave is your growth, the challenges, the uncertainty, and the risk, and all the things that lead to your goals. But inside the cave is the comfort, safety, right? Relief, comfort, safety, relief, and certainty, right? Comfort feels like freedom for a lot of people until it becomes a cage, right? That's why I wanted this to be a cage, not a cave. But the point is comfort blocks you away from your goals, right? It becomes a cage. So moving on. All right. The first few months, right? The first few months are always the hardest, right? Often quitting happens when things become boring, right? That's the crucial idea here, right? Excitement creates movement, identity creates consistency, right? Many men begin with motivation, right? But the motivation is going to fade at some point, right? So then you're just left with repetition, the same workout, the same content, the same like studying or learning, right? The same work day after day, nothing dramatic, nothing exciting, right? And the psychology shifts from can I do this to can I keep doing this, right? And this is where most people fail, not in crisis, but in repetition, right? So the image here, all right? Another one of my favorite images today, right? We've all heard the same, cliche of the devil and the angel, right? In this case, the devil is comfort, right? Right. The devil voice, the comfort voice is saying, do that tomorrow, do that later, not today, right? Let's take it easy, right? But your future self, right? The angel on your shoulder is telling you to continue, to keep going, right? One more day and stay the course because the future self voice knows where all that's going to lead to, right? Every excuse that you make feeds the comfort voice. Every disciplined action feeds your future self voice, right? So you need to understand every decision that you make is going to strengthen one of the voices on your shoulder, and you need to decide what voice you want to strengthen, okay? All right, let's wrap this up here. I think that was the last slide. All right, last image here. All right, just to sum everything up. All right, we've got the fortress of the life you want to live, okay? Inside that fortress is your goals, your dreams, all of that bullshit, right? All the doors is everything we talked about today, all right? Your ego, the identity, the uncertainty, the social pressure, the incompetence, and the boredom, right? Most men think they're fighting one enemy, all right? You're not. You're actually fighting 6 psychological barriers that we talked about today, all right? Recognize the barriers, break through them, become the man that you're capable of becoming, okay? Thank you guys for listening. Hopefully this was a better episode. I felt a little more conversational. I think I mixed up my words a lot. I'm like, I could record another take, but like, who wants to do that? So we're going to post this, just raw freaking footage. Okay, this is my first take, guys, just so you know. Anyways, that was fun for me. I like that a little bit better. See you guys on the next episode.